Today is the first day, actually, that it's actually shown, so my colleagues haven't seen it. And not even multi-billion asset managers who were my clients for years have something like this. And not that I didn't create enough pressure, but let's do this. So I'm showing you my screen. Please write in chat if you can see my screen and you can hear me clearly. It's really important for me that you do see it. Can you see the screen? Okay, yes, good. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So very briefly, I'll give you the intro and then we'll jump into the fascinating stuff. The intro is this. You're looking at something that we call a crash test, portfolio crash test. It's really a bunch of stress tests on one screen. It's a kind of presentation of stress tests that we came up with, working in this industry for many years, for decades, with top firms. Just how do you present something as complicated as risk on one screen, right? And that differentiates us. One of the things that differentiates us from everybody else is we try to give you visual representation without sacrificing the actual theory, the math of it, right? All other providers that do risk management for advisors take massive shortcuts. They may do the presentation, but they actually underlying it, they don't have the model. Like Jan said, that they will do different kind of models, very simplistic kind of models. They will focus on confidence ranges. They will not do stress tests like we do. But this thing has been around for a few years. That's not what I'm talking about as being exciting, even though I think it's really cool. What's exciting is that we took this presentation and we combined it with the custom AI model. So this is not ChatGPT. We have our own model that we trained. We actually bought a computer for like $60,000, believe it or not, with NVIDIA cards that's hosted separately for our clients. And you will see how it works. So right now on the screen, you see a portfolio, some funds. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can imagine your portfolio. You'll have a chance to test drive this thing really. You see a portfolio of different funds, okay, on the left. On the center piece, you'll see the different scenarios. So if 2008 crash happened again, this portfolio would lose 40.1%. If China corporate debt implosion happened, it would lose 22.3%. Now, the thing about these scenarios, and as Jan alluded to, they're really difficult to create because you do have to have an expert that spends hours on each scenario, like probably a day. Like it usually takes a day or two for me and Jan to create a scenario, then maybe a couple of days more to review it, because you have to do a lot of research. Because even if you know something very well, you need to understand what's happening now. What's happening? What are the research reports saying about these different factors? Well, we created something called Custom Stress Test AI, and let me show you. So this is the fun stuff. I'm gonna go in here and I'll give you the past. The past is me or Jan, somebody who's worked for decades in this, has to go read like 10, 12 research reports on a topic, then figure out which factors to shock, then come up with a meaningful stress test and then test it, which takes, like I said, days. Now you're going to be able to just type in. So I'm going to type in, let's say, US stagflation. Let's say I'm worried about this scenario. I'm going to hit enter and I'm going to let the neural network work here. Now, this is just a cool thing. It shows me, it generates an image that I could use in my report, or I don't have to. And it generates immediately the factors that I would shock. So it just saved me days of work. That's why I wasn't shy about promoting this and telling you that this is the future of risk. This is not hyperbole. It is, because it cuts the cycle of creating a new stress test. So it shocks oil upward, S&P downward by, and these are standard deviation. This is a column of standard deviation. So oil up 2 standard deviation, S&P 500 down 2 standard deviation, 10-year and 1-year up 100 bips, 100 basis points. That's a great succinct scenario. I'm not saying this particular one would take me many days just because I've modeled it before, but it would still take me a little bit of time to make sure that everything is right. But also this is what I do for a living, just stress testing. You as advisors, you're not expected to be specifically stress testing design experts. And now I'm just going to say apply scenario, and voila, it comes up on my screen. My portfolio would lose 26.7% in that scenario. And if I hover my mouse on the right, I actually see which parts of my portfolio would lose the most. Now imagine how this will transform your conversations with clients. Now you don't have to talk about boring, confidence ranges or, with 95% probability, you're going to lose no more than X and so on. Like, is that even relevant? I mean, actually, when you say that risk is within 95%, that's basically saying I'm going to sell you an umbrella that works only when there's no rain, because the risk is in the other 5%. But how do you measure that other 5%? You measure it through stress tests. Now, before, you would have to sit there and think of these scenarios, or usually clients request us to do the scenarios because they don't have the time, they don't necessarily have the expertise. Now, my only limit now is imagination. Now, let's say I'm going to do another one, relevant one, war in the Middle East, right? So I'm gonna, you see right there, US stagflation appeared on the screen. I can create a report. Tomorrow, I'm gonna show you something even more amazing. We're gonna create a video about this portfolio in 5 minutes without any work from us, but that's tomorrow. We have another session. Now let's do a few more. War in the Middle East. Okay, it generates a preview image. I think that this is really cool. It's a nice touch. It feels like we are in the future. When I saw this, because I used to always want, when I was dealing with risk teams, it's actually very dry, a lot of numbers and tables, and people get bored. You need something that oomph to get their attention. For you, it could be dealing with your clients. Whether you want to use this or not, you can remove the picture, but I think that the image generation, like, we wanted to give you something from the 21st century, because our competitors, they create risk tools based on textbooks from like 1980s that are not even relevant in the post 2008 world. We wanted to go beyond and go into the future. So war in the Middle East is basically oil and energy type of factor, but it also adds emerging market sovereign spread, which I think is huge. That's something really important. And what I could do here is I could say show explanation. Before I even add a scenario, notice that it gives me not only the model, it gives me the latest research. You see on the right? These are the latest articles about this topic. And then it gives me every factor analysis. Why is it bringing in emerging market sovereign spread? Well, it basically leads to increased risk perception for emerging markets, widening spreads over treasuries. And it basically gives you a full explanation. So if you're with a client, you will never ever be at a loss for an explanation for any event. You think about how that will transform your work. Instead of being somebody who gives standardized reports and talks about numbers, you're now going to talk about news and the economy. So every time you meet, you will have something to discuss. And this is built, by us who are we are risk management experts. As Jan said, we won some major awards. We won the 2016 Peter Bernstein Award for risk research, which is like a world championship of risk because it's the best article. And this is not to kind of self-promote, but just to tell you that you can use this with confidence, that it's not just a gimmick. I can click apply scenario and we'll do the war in the Middle East. And boom, it adds to the screen. In fact, scary, right? It's not very nice to know this, but the war actually is good for the business, which we know, killing is the business, and the business is good, unfortunately, right? It's very sad to know, but we do know that wars promote the portfolio. So, and the model supposedly counterintuitively, but actually correctly tells you that. Let's add one more scenario. And there's no limit to this. When we finally built this tool, I had a couple of days to play around with it. You couldn't pull me away from it. I was just trying. Let's do trade wars. Okay, it generates an image. Now I could regenerate it. May not be perfect, but it is a trade war image. I guess these neural networks are a little bit politically correct. They try to stay away from tough questions. But look, it does oil up. It does private equity down, United States down, and all country world index up. So basically, it suggests that US will be hurt by trade wars. Now, you may agree or disagree. You can click here and remove a factor, or you can change the shock. For example, I could say, no, I think that actually equity will be negative as well. And I'm going to click apply. And it will add to the scenario right there. Notice how, this is amazing, not because it's our own product, but I've worked in this industry for so many years, and finally we have the tools to go into the 21st century.